All right, where the mother's negative and the fetus is positive. Okay? And so that's where this comes in. And what happens is, for some of you, some of you are up on this, some of you are a little rusty. But when the baby's Rh positive and the mother's Rh negative, there's usually seepage of blood, mixing of blood from baby to mother, from mother to baby, through the placenta. And so if the baby's Rh positive blood gets, any of that blood gets in the mother, which it will, then she will, it doesn't bother her at all. But her body will produce anti-Rh positive antibodies to destroy that Rh positive blood that's getting in her system from the baby. Now those anti-Rh positive antibodies, it goes both ways. Those anti-Rh positive antibodies go after the Rh positive blood that's in the fetus. And it causes the blood cells to explode, blow up. That's called erythroblastosis fetalis. And also it can be called fatalis. It used to be fatal, but now they've got ways of dealing with this. In the old days, back before Rogam, back before they knew anything, a lot of babies died from that. They were born, stillborn. They were born and died right after birth, or born dead. All right, but anyway, everybody, right here, I'll show you. I think I've got a picture of that hemolytic anemia. Now, aplastic anemia, we've talked about that. Aplastic anemia, that's where the bone marrow is messed up, and destruction of and one antibody. I'll talk about this more in microbiology, but also we mentioned in here right after World War II, one of the major broad spectrum antibodies that was discovered. Broad spectrum antibiotics that was discovered or worked out was chloramphenicol, and one in about 200,000 people or so would develop aplastic anemia, and that person, of course, that person would be doomed at that time. So that stuff's not used anymore. But anyway, and certain medications can cause that. But again, the main thing I remember for that is the radiation at the end of World War II with the atomic bombs, the bombs and so forth. But anyway, right here, everybody, that's a diagram right there that shows that erythroblastosis fetalis concept. All right, the first pregnancy, she builds up these first she builds up anti-Rh positive antibodies. She's going to build up some. That was just mixing of blood. The fetus is Rh positive. The mother is Rh, as it says up here, the mother's Rh negative. All right, now then, these antibodies are still in her system, not bothering anybody. Don't bother a person, don't bother her, nothing. She's totally oblivious, doesn't know, doesn't care. All right, everything's cool. But if she gets pregnant again, these Rh positive antibodies that were in her system, there is mixing of blood. These anti-Rh positive antibodies move across the placenta, and there's the fetus, and they will work to destroy the Rh positive blood. That's the way that works. Now, the mother has to be Rh negative, and the baby has to be Rh positive. So if the daddy's O negative and the mom is A negative, there's no worry. If the daddy's AB negative and she's A positive, A negative, there's no worry. But if she is negative, she has to be negative. If she's negative and he is positive, whatever blood type, A, O, B, AB, if he's positive, then that's where the problem can come in. It will come in. And the OBGYN, the women, they will give you an injection of Rogaine. But so they'll know that. They'll want to know your husband. They want to know the guy's blood type, because that's important. That's important, especially if you're negative. Okay. All right. So 85% of the people in the U.S. of A are Rh positive, though, and that comes from the rhesus monkey. And Carl Landsteiner, he was an old man at the time. In the early 1900s, around 1906, somewhere along in there, he discovered the ABO blood groups. About 1939, somewhere along in there, much later in his life, the old man, he discovered he and another investigator discovered the Rh factor with the rhesus monkey blood. All right, so that's where that comes from. All right, but anyway, that's pretty cool. All right, pernicious anemia, this was scary right here. I knew one old man that had this, old fellow I think I told you about him, old man in my little hometown named Joe Batson. Mr. Basson was a little bitty dried up fellow. He owned a he was a nice guy. I liked him. Every other word that came out of his mouth was a cuss word. Way back there, he had owned a little mechanic shop. Told me he used to work on the Model A and the Model T Fords. I mean, he was an old man when I was a kid growing up. And he had bird dogs. But the old fella, he loved to bird hunt, loved to deer hunt back when he could hunt. But he developed this anemia, pernicious anemia. And I'd get where I'd go by, he and his wife lived in a little house not too far from where I was at the store. And I'd go by and give him some deer meat. He loved deer meat, but he got where he couldn't hunt. Well, was diagnosed with pernicious anemia. And pernicious anemia is an inability to absorb adequate amounts of vitamin B12 from the digestive tract. And vitamin B12 is necessary in the manufacture of red blood cells. And they tried giving him B12 shots. Sometimes that works, sometimes it's successful, sometimes it doesn't work, and I don't know all the reasons why. But anyway, the old fella, he was real old anyway, he finally passed away. Pernicious anemia. In other words, vitamin B12, inadequate, usually to absorb B12, usually due to the inability of the body to produce the intrinsic factor. The intrinsic factor is not there. The intrinsic factor is necessary for B12 absorption. Y'all remember that from digestive stuff. And so, the inability to absorb adequate amounts of B12, that's usually what it is. And again, they do try. Anybody know somebody who had pernicious anemia just out of curiosity? No, nobody does. But anyway, none of these things would be very good. Sickle cell anemia, abnormal hemoglobin, it's labeled HbS. Supposedly, the abnormal hemoglobin, there was a mutation in the blood to try to fight off the malaria the organism, the Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium falciparum, the malaria organism, which is a sporozoan parasite. And supposedly, this one theory is that the sickle cell was supposed to, it was a mutation to try to combat the sickle cell. And but the sickle cell turned out to be a real serious situation, and it really is. So sickle cell anemia, production of an abnormal hemoglobin, and I just have here, there's a genetic effect. This is genetic, which will result in abnormally shaped cells, and those cells don't go through the vessels very well. The abnormal hemoglobin forms a fibrous precipitate with the erythrocytes. The cells can rupture easily. They also can clog small vessels. Sickle cell anemia was more common in black folks from the equator, from the African countries. Of course, with all the intermarriages now and all the inner stuff now, I think probably there might be some in different races now. But again, you'd have to ask doctors and people about that to know more about it. That could be a serious situation, especially if a person is homozygous for sickle cell. Now, what does homozygous mean? Homo means the same, doesn't it? Have both genes for that. If they're heterozygous, it's more manageable, so they tell me, the sickle cell type stuff.